If you're in procurement, you know the daily grind, right? Well, what if you could shift from constantly fighting fires to actually driving real strategic value? Today, we're going to break down exactly how to do that using something called Supplier Relationship Management, or SRM. Sound familiar? You walk into the office and bam, you're hit with a stock shortage, a surprise price hike, or a delivery that's gone missing. It feels like you're always playing defense, never getting ahead of the game. And let's be honest, it's no wonder. The modern supply chain is getting hit from every direction. We've got price increases, shortages of literally everything, stock, people. Then you've got new regulations popping up, competition is fierce, and demand is all over the place. It's a really tough world to be in right now. So when all this pressure hits, what's the typical knee-jerk reaction? We squeeze our suppliers, right? We demand price cuts, or we threaten to just find someone new and start the whole tendering process all over again. It's a very short-term and often a pretty adversarial approach. But hang on a second, is that really the only way? What if constantly reacting and switching is actually costing us more in the long run? Let's explore if there's a smarter, more strategic way to manage these incredibly important relationships. And the answer really is all about a fundamental shift in your mindset. It's about moving from being reactive to being proactive. This is the very core of strategic supplier relationship management. So, what in the world is SRM? Well, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply has a great definition. They call it the holistic management of relationships, based on the criticality of the goods or services being procured. Now, the keywords there are holistic and criticality. It means you don't treat every single supplier the same way. This slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got that old school reactive mindset, always putting out fires, always focused on slashing costs. But look at the right. The SRM approach is all about proactively building relationships to create value for both sides. You're moving from quick short-term fixes to this ongoing cycle of improvement. So how do we get started? Well, it begins with what some people call the science of SRM. This is all about getting to know your supply base through data, a bit of analysis, and having a really clear picture of your risk. And the first principle is a total classic for a reason. You've heard of it, right? The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. In the world of procurement, this basically means that about 80% of your total spend is probably with just 20% of your suppliers. Now, why does that matter so much? Because a simple spend analysis tells you immediately where to focus your energy. It points out those huge accounts that need careful management. It can uncover things like contract leakage where you're not getting the prices you agreed to. And most importantly, it shows you who your real partners are and maybe, just maybe, who you should think about dropping. Okay, so you know who you spend the most money with. But is spend the only thing that matters? Absolutely not. How do you figure out who deserves a true partnership versus who just needs a simple, clean, transactional relationship? This is where we get a little more strategic. We need to look at two key things. First, what's the business impact? How much does this product or service really affect your company's profitability? And second, what's the supply risk? How hard is it to get this thing? How vulnerable is that market? And when you plot those two factors, you get this, the Kroliich matrix. It is such a powerful tool. It gives you a clear game plan. For routine stuff in the bottom left, you just automate and simplify. For leverage items, you use your buying power to get a great deal. For those painful bottleneck items, your main goal is just to secure your supply. But for those strategic items in the top right, high impact, high risk, that's where you invest. That's where you build real collaborative partnerships. So once you've got the science figured out, you have the data, you've used the matrix, it's time to switch gears and focus on the art. And this is all about the human element, collaboration, influence, and building the right kind of relationship for each of those quadrants. And here is a question that can be an absolute game changer. How does your supplier see you? We spend all this time rating and evaluating them, but have you ever stopped to think about it from their side? To them, are you a core strategic customer, or are you just another account, maybe even a difficult one? The difference in what you get out of the relationship is it's stark. A competitive, arm's-length relationship is usually built on a lack of trust and a focus on just enforcing compliance. But a collaborative one, that's built on trust and a shared goal. It leads to innovation, setting targets together, and a real partnership. Which finally brings us to the payoff. Why do all this work? Because a strategic approach to SRM unlocks real, tangible value that goes way beyond just shaving a few percentage points off a price tag. Let me give you a really powerful, real-world example. During the COVID crisis, a national house builder was facing massive supply delays. But because they had already built a strong, collaborative partnership with a key supplier, what happened? That supplier prioritized them. They made sure they got their supply, they helped control costs, and they added massive value. All because that relationship was strong before the crisis ever hit. Now that's the power of SRM. And this really brings us to a critical point. The data, the spreadsheets, the matrices, they're all essential, but they are not enough. You can't just hide behind a screen. The art of SRM, the real magic, comes down to your soft skills, your ability to communicate, to really listen, to persuade, and to build genuine human relationships. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? For your most critical suppliers, it's not just about contracts and KPIs. It's about building personable relationships built on honesty, trust, and mutual gain mindsets. That is the absolute heart of effective SRM. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Just think about your own supply base for a second. What is the one relationship, just one, that you could start transforming from purely transactional to truly strategic, starting tomorrow? The potential value waiting for you is absolutely huge.